Hello everyone. Introduction to the smart grid coming on to the last section, that is section 3. We will be discussing the smart grid vision and the roadmap for India. Then we will be discussing the resilient and the self-healing grid concept, then the present development international policies in the smart grid, and then the cities and the pilot projects in India. So firstly, the smart vision and the roadmap of India has been designed by or given by the Ministry of Power Government of India. The Smart Grid vision for India says transform the Indian power sector into a secure, adaptive, sustainable, and digitally enabled ecosystem that provides a reliable and quality energy for all with active participation of stakeholders. So this vision itself talks about the significance of a smart grid, where you can see here the words being used such as secure, adaptive, sustainable, digitally enabled, and participation of stakeholders. So these are all important features of smart grid which has to be integrated, which has taken up as a vision for India. Now, in order to attain this vision, and in order to reach this vision, the directives have been given. In order to achieve this vision, stakeholders are advised to formulate a specific policies and programs, and with taking in line of member of power, this has to be implemented thoroughly. Talking about the roadmap of India, let's see how a roadmap of India looks like. So when you talk about a roadmap of India, then basically it has been designed as an by the Ministry of Power Government of India, which is in a 12th plan, 13th plan, and 14th plan. So let's see how it is being taken up. For example, if you talk about the 12th plan, it was up to 2017, whereas 13th plan is up to 2022. You can see here, this is 22. Whereas when we talk about 14th plan, the 14th plan is talking about greater than 2022. So the first point which we are talking about is enabling access and availability of the power quality to all. So in order to make accessible the in 12th plan, it was targeted that the roadmap was laid that the household must be electrified by 2017. The next challenge was taken up during the 13th plan, which is again a roadmap which was 24 hours of supply to the urban areas. If not 24 hours, then minimum 12 hours of supply to the consumers, including evening peak time by 2022. Then the second point towards the roadmap was loss reduction. Similarly, then smart grid rollouts, including automation, microgrids, and other improvements. And then next up was the smart grid rollout, including automation, microgrid, then policies and tariffs. Similarly, green power and energy efficiency. Then green power energy efficiency continued with electric vehicles and energy sources. For example, if we talk about electric vehicles, in the 12th plan, it was decided to have development of electric vehicles and smart grid energy plans until 2017, whereas by the end of 2022, the large rollout of energy storage system, electric EV charging stations to be installed in the urban areas and the strategic location on the highways. And in the 14th plan, it has been decided the roadmap has been led to have electric charging stations in all urban areas along all state and national highways and enablers and other initiatives. So these are the roadmaps which has been decided by the Ministry of Energy, the Government of India Ministry of Power for 12th, 13th, and 14th plan. This is how a roadmap of India is being laid. Next, coming on to the resilient and the self-healing concept. The resilience of of a grid is based on the three important parameters. So that is, first is prevention. We need to prevent any occurrence to happen. We need to prevent any fault to happen. Then recovery. If a fault happens, then it has to recover as soon as possible. And then the third is survivability. That is, the minimum basic level of electric functionality should be available. So whenever a fault is occurring, the grid should be able to limit that particular fault, which could be done through advanced technologies, which could through sensors, which can automatically sense the fault which might occur due to imbalance of voltage or any other electrical parameter. Then a recovery can take place with again with the help of user techniques which can reroute the power from one place to other place. And the third part is that is the survivability, and that is in order to maintain the basic level of electric functionality, which means even if the problem occurs, we should be able to give the minimum electricity required in that particular area. So this will give the resilience. This is a definition of how a grid can be resilient. So if a grid is able to prevent, is able to recover and is able to survive, that grid can be said as a resilient grid. So a resilient electric grid can be termed as keep the lights on, an effort to keep the lights on, which means an effort to continue the power supply at any cost in any condition. So the primary goal for resilient electric grid will be limiting the fault current, limiting the high temperatures, then superconducting cables to be used, then sharing of power to be done, and the cascading effect to prevent the blackout. Next, moving towards the self-healing grid, as the word suggests, self-healing, which means in order to heal itself, which means in order to recover itself. So the self-healing grid has a property to identify and fix its own problem. No human intervention is required, and there should be constant monitoring and tune itself, anticipation of the fault. So overall, we can explain a self-healing grid as a grid which is able to anticipate any kind of fault which is going to occur through constant monitoring and tuning itself. So it is able to identify the problem and react to the abnormalities within a fraction of seconds so that the abnormalities are isolated rapidly, and it is able to identify and fix its problem itself without any human intervention. So this is how a self-healing grid works. Next, what is the present development towards the smart grid? So when we talk about the smart grid, currently we are more concerned about the rising global temperature, which is approximately 2 degrees Celsius rise in the temperature. So by the end of 2035, the fourth-fifth of the total energy-related CO2 emission will be locked in by our existing capital stock. So by the current energy usage, we will be diminishing or we will not be having the non-renewable energy sources left with us, and this will also lead to huge CO2 emission, which will definitely harm the environment. So the global trend always suggests that we need more and more energy, and the renewable energy sources are depleting. Non-renewable energy sources are depleting, so we have to move towards the uh, towards the renewable energy resources which are available on, and in order to meet the demand. So this is a global trend which we have, and in order to make it the difference, we need to improve the efficiency, because if we don't increase the energy efficiency, we will not be able to sufficiently give the power to the customers. Then the policies, the international policies, when we talk about the first comes the US. US have defined certain policies for for the country, that is to order to implement net smart metering policies, then interconnection of the standards and the rules, then smart metering targets, then time of use pricing, data security issues, RTP, that is real time pricing. So these are all features which US is going to implement. These are the policies. Similarly, UK has also the policies in order to reduce the carbon emissions, then financial incentives to be given for the smart grid application, then various kinds of bills or energy acts to be passed through legislation, and the smart grid policy has to be emphasized towards the development and the modernization. Similarly, Italy also has a similar kind of policies in line with UK and USA, and same as Japan. Again, as you can see here, it is again working on the CO2 emission and the renewable generation part. Then reducing the zero emission, the investment, huge investment on the smart grid technology, a strategic energy plan, and the smart grid demonstration program and smart grid development deployment program. Similarly, South Korea will also have very similar kind of policies which other countries are following, and similar with China. When we talk about the smart cities and the smart pilot projects, these are the few or the 20 of the projects which are have shown here. You can easily get this list on the Smart Grid India forum available online, which is always being updated. So currently there are 100 smart cities which are in the list, and maybe several pilot projects are going on, which is 14 in number. So 14 pilot projects are still running in country, and the smart city list is this. So thank you very much. I hope you would have understood the basics of smart grid, and you would have enjoyed the introduction to smart grid session into the three parts. Thank you very much.